So what's going on, Trucketeers? It's the Truck Guy here. Wanted to get back at you with another video, and today we're doing the Stanley 10-707. So I just had a request in for this video. It's been a couple weeks, but I absolutely wanted to get to it, and this has been sitting on my tool bench for just a couple of weeks now. So I had not seen the 707 too much out there being promoted by Stanley, so it's a little bit under the radar. You have to look for this one a little bit, but picked it up on Amazon for $19.99, so it is going to set you back a little bit, but Stanley's producing excellent utility knives. They've got them, all over the place. I mean, they've got all different styles, sizes. They don't really run into the button lock Milwaukee sector much, but they've got all the standard traditional utility knives. And Stanley's got a few with a little bit of flair, but not quite as much as the others. So let's go ahead and jump into the review, and let's do it. So let's go ahead and jump into the review. So taking a look at the packaging, there's really not a whole lot here. So we've got the tool-free blade change, made in USA, retractable utility knife, everything we've already mentioned. They're hooking us up with 3 blades, so credit to Stanley for making our lives a little bit easier. And on the back, we've got some warnings, things of that nature, but, really nothing much. So let's go ahead and get it out of the packaging and see what we think. So to open this particular knife, you just spin the tool-free blade change mechanism, which is really just a screw. If it were really tight, you can enlist a screwdriver. Set the packaging aside. So what you've got here with your Stanley knife is really a pretty simple setup. So we've got our 3 blades that Stanley's hooking us up with, and we've got our slider mechanism. We've got our 2 halves of the knife body, and then we've got our screw, which is actually, let's see, it does look like there's a mechanism to keep that in place, so that's not going to fly out on you. So I definitely like that from Stanley, because if you lose this screw, you are screwed. You're never going to get that back. You're never going to find that size again, for the most part. You could jerry-rig something, but it is what it is. I like that that's connected. So really, to go ahead and get your knife together, you grab one of your blades. I think you could probably fit a healthy number in this blade storage compartment here. So you could probably get, 5, 6 blades in there, something like that. So that's really nice from Stanley. And the slider, you just kind of drop it in. You'll want to make sure it's at the farthest back setting when you're getting your blade in, just for safety. So you pop that down in the slider, and you just want to make sure that notch lines up with the second notch on your blade. Then pop it down, and that's flying around a little bit, not too bad, but this can be one of the more difficult steps. Get it positioned the way you want, and then when you're aligning the 2 halves of your knife, you just want to make sure the top half gets under this lip here on the front, and then set the back half down, and then you just spin your screw in with your finger, and you can go ahead and get that hand tight. You don't want to over tighten this, because again, if you don't have a screwdriver on you, you're going to run into issues. So right out of the gates, I'm liking the feel in the hand. I wanted to get the blade in there first, just to kind of get us all set up and ready to go. But there is some weight to this knife. I'm surprised, because sometimes you'll see, what's termed kind of, or marketed as the old school utility knife, but you get it, whether it's on Amazon or whatnot, and it just doesn't feel like what you'd expect. This Stanley knife, the 707, this definitely has that old school feel. I really like that from Stanley. And the knockoffs, they're going to be light, they're going to be chintzy, if you go with Stanley, I'm not saying it's this, the Stanley that we all grew up with. I mean, there's been innovation, but Stanley produces a really high quality utility knife, and it's going to be more reminiscent of that style with, some advancements, things of that nature. But for the most part, you're getting a rock solid utility knife, and you can feel it in the weight of this knife, which is pretty incredible. For the size of this knife, which is kind of a moderate size, there's a good amount of weight to this knife. It's definitely one of the heavier knives that I've encountered. So in terms of slider, it's definitely an old school slider. It's not as smooth as some other ones that you might encounter, but it will definitely rock it up to full extension. You're going to get caught from time to time. It's just not overly smooth, but it's going to get up there, and it's going to get the job done. You've got two positions up to full extension, so you've got the classic slider mechanism. And you also saw it when I opened it up, so definitely a classic mechanism for sure. So once you're fully retracted, the other way to go about this, and we'll enlist the 1505 Milwaukee. I apologize, Milwaukee, Stanley on the same screen, but come on guys, we like all utility knives here. But if you're running into an issue, you can definitely use your screwdriver to get this open. Or if you really want to tighten that down, make sure it's not going to fly open, you can use the screwdriver. So not a big deal if you enlist the screwdriver. But the problem is with a blade like this, you have an independent slider mechanism in there. So you're going to get some wiggle, you're going to get some wobble. Why is this different? Well, let me show you why this is different. We will grab a different type of fixed blade, fixed body knife. So back at you, and I want to show you the difference between the 707 and something like the Stanley 819, because we've got two fixed body knives, but this is a fixed blade, whereas this is a slider mechanism blade where you're going to get some wiggle, you're going to get some wobble, whereas this knife, you've got the gold wheel. Check out the review for this if you have not seen this. This is a massive utility knife. But you can tighten this screw down and you're going to get no wiggle or no wobble on that blade. And that's because you're actually tightening the blade with the body of this knife. So it's still got its traditional slider mechanism, but when you tighten this knife down, or this screw down for that matter, you're tightening up on the actual blade itself, which gives you obviously no wiggle, no wobble, and you're going to be entirely precise with that blade. Whereas this knife, when you tighten down the body of the knife, you're not actually tightening on the blade. So kind of I don't love that design from Stanley, because I feel like one of the benefits of a knife like this is you can really ratchet that screw down and get some precise work out of it while still having the traditional slider mechanism. So this is kind of a bit of a hybrid by Stanley. So the 707, there's a lot to like. The only other real feature is the lanyard loop. We'll get the Milwaukee out of the way as well. You've got the lanyard loop, and you've got, now it's a little too tight. So that's why I would refrain from using the screwdriver if at all possible. You just go hand tight, because again, you're not tightening up that blade at all. So this is the real mechanism, or feature, if you will, of the 707. You can open up the knife, you can get to your blade storage. The other nice feature about this is if you work a lot of construction and you just like this type of knife, you can also open it up. You can blow out the entire knife, get it nice and clean, and get back to work. With a knife like this, it's all good, but it's just much harder to clean. It's harder to get in all these crevices and small areas. If you're working in a drywall, sawdust, things of that nature, it's just a little bit harder. This you can, blow it out with your air compressor, what have you. little brush. It's just going to be a lot easier. So take it for what it is. But one of the downfalls of the 707, despite, you know, having some nice features, is just, again, I mean, you can't lock this blade down, so you've just got a lot of wiggle and wobble there. So overall, I really like the 707, and I really wanted to give this one of the best reviews that I had come across, because it's simple, it's to the point, it's bright, you're going to be able to notice it in a drawer of knives, outside, what have you. But, you know, there are some shortcomings with this knife. You know, you can't lock that blade down, which I really like. When you can't do that, it limits you a little bit. But if you're just in the market for a good solid utility knife, tool-free blade change, blade storage, simple. You've also got that downward angle with this knife, so it you know, it alleviates some pressure, some pain. It also gives you some downward force. So people looking for that are going to look at the 707 and think, hey, that's a knife for me. But you want to know about some of these shortcomings as well. So that's why I want to get you guys all the information right away and up front. So that's the 707. Pretty simple, but there are some things involved with it. No thrills, no frills, unfortunately, but a good solid knife from Stanley. They've done an excellent job here, and it's definitely a knife you should check out if you like this style of utility knife. So that's it, guys. Please like, please subscribe, and as always, we'll talk to you on the next video.